Alright, spoilers for Punisher One Last Kill. We have done the video talking about Punisher One Last Kill without getting into any of the specifics, but in that video, I said I would make a video breaking down the specifics of Punisher One Last Kill. Certain choices I found interesting, shots I found cool, things about the narrative that I think are kind of strange, how it relates to the comics, and we're just going to go at it. And I will say, I'm recording this 2 or 3 days later. My opinion on the special has not changed very much. Overall, I think it was successful. I think there were cool action scenes. I think the writing's kind of messy and all over the place, but because it's writing for the character of Frank Castle, I don't mind it as much as I would if it were for any character who is supposed to have more consistency. Because the theme of this with Frank Castle is just, he's a mess. That's always kind of his deal, but this is the messiest we have ever seen this character. So like, I don't mind that he seems to be quitting from being Punisher and then being Punisher again for what is like the 4th time in his career, as far as we've seen him. Because it's like, yeah, this character just doesn't learn things. And a lot of the rest of the issues I feel like a lot of people have writing-wise with the special come from the fact that the Punisher, in a Punisher solo story, can only do so much. At least as far as I've seen. Like, the thing about Punisher is the Punisher is wrong. Everybody knows it. Spider-Man knows it, Captain America knows it, any of the characters we know and we trust know what Punisher is doing is wrong. However, sometimes, according to Punisher, it's necessary. So like, if New York is being torn apart by a gang war, and the Punisher gets in and solves it, is it good that there's a guy hunting all the gangsters? Not necessarily. It would be better if they were all brought to prison. But in a world where the justice system is corrupt, a character like the Punisher makes sense. The problem is, when you spend time with the Punisher, you have to acknowledge that he is doing something insane. And either he has to realize that and then stop being Punisher, and that's no fun, or he just can never learn that lesson. Which I think sometimes is fine. But I think a lot of people's shortcomings with this special presentation came from the fact that the Punisher felt relatively flat throughout this story, and obviously was all over the place emotionally. But flat in terms of he did not seem to grow, the special didn't seem to really be about anything, and in a 48-minute long special presentation, where the last 20-ish minutes are just pure action, those first 28 minutes are something that I don't think this special had enough juice to sustain that 28 minutes of something. Honestly, if it was just action scenes, perhaps tied together with characters talking about the Punisher, or some sort of new character that the Punisher has to talk to, because that's why he works so well with Daredevil and Spider-Man, is they get to push back on his methods, and it creates this interesting conversation. But when you don't have that, it just gets unwieldy. A character like this, in a story like this, needs direction. It needs to be very specific, and I just don't think it's written that way. But anyway, let's start talking about the special presentation. We start with what is gotta be one of the silliest visuals when you really get down to it. The Punisher is doing pull-ups in his apartment on some sort of bar that he seems to have installed, because it's not like a pipe that has like utility, it's just hanging out, but he has covered it with barbed wire. So he's doing pull-ups and sweating and yelling, and he's in pain. He's taking painkillers, he's drinking, and this feels like something on a page that would seem cool. And it does seem cool because of the way it's presented, and I think it's filmed pretty well. But when you just look at what it is, he has a pull-up bar that he covered in barbed wire. Now what I was thinking when I saw this part is, oh, he's gonna hit somebody with that later, that'll be kinda cool. But no, that's never really delivered upon. And it's like, we get it, John Bernthal. You're in great shape. Much like Daredevil and Bullseye, you don't have to prove anything to us. And what we're supposed to get from this is just, oh, the Punisher is punishing himself, right? Because he lacks direction. And what we will learn later is he's even thinking about taking his own life. But I don't think that's what the pull-up bar is for. I think the pull-up bar is for that they thought it looked cool. And then get voiceover from a news report about how Little Sicily is in turmoil. There are riots. Everyone is fighting everyone else on the streets. We see footage of one specific guy, who I think is a funny detail, holding a cane, just ready to go to town on some guys with like a walker, like a walking stick. But also maybe he stole that from a store or from a guy. It's unclear. It's a funny visual. And then during the montage, we have characters talking about crime. We get some interesting sentiments from the people of New York. They say things like,
when everybody's afraid to rob and steal, things are cool. But now, it's chaos.
And the one I think was really interesting,
you can't even step outside.
You can say what you want about the Gnucci, but at least they kept it peaceful.
But those two statements together, I think, paint a very strange picture of New York. Because we will learn from Gnucci that Frank has gone full Punisher, he has killed her husband and 3 sons, it has destroyed the Gnucci crime family, which also destroyed the police, because the oldest Gnucci son was a member of the police. So morale is low, boo-hoo. But like, I think this is an interesting way to start a Punisher presentation, because these characters that are not the Punisher saying there's so much lawlessness, people are out of control. People are crazy. They're becoming violent, and it's because they don't have the Gnuccis, the crime family that was keeping order in the city, to deal with them. And I guess I just think it's interesting because outside of a couple of lines kind of describing things the Gnuccis have done, we never see the case against the Gnuccis. And I don't think there needs to be a very strong case against the crime family. Like, obviously, they're the crime family. They're not the good guys. But the special presentation treats the status quo that they uphold as preferable to the chaos that the Punisher unleashes, and the special doesn't really have anything to say about that. It's especially interesting because we will learn that Frank killed the father and the 3 sons. He didn't kill the mother, Ma Gnucci, which is strange considering Frank kills whoever. I assume Frank's internal code against killing women and children probably ends the mob enforcer wife, who is going to send a lot of guys after you. And I guess it's interesting here because Frank does not finish the job, and that's what Ma Gnucci tells him. She's like, "You forgot me." And I'm watching this, and I'm like, yeah, Frank, you forgot her. Why didn't you kill her? Or why did you think you could quit now instead of killing her? Because she seems as culpable as any of her family members, perhaps more. And I'm not saying Frank needs to kill her, but I guess the question that this special brings up is, what happened between killing the 4th member of the Gnucci crime family and now that made Frank not want to kill the final member of the Gnucci crime family, but instead retire or something? And the answer is no answer. We don't really get an explanation about this. And I just think it's strange because the beginning of the special presentation is not saying, where is the Punisher to help us maintain order? The beginning of the special presentation is saying, the thing that the Punisher did, for what are completely selfish reasons we know, because he wanted revenge on the people that killed his family. Obviously, the Gnuccis do all kinds of crimes, so I'm sure other people could come up with a reason why he killed them. But because of what Frank did, everything got worse. And Frank, in the beginning of the special, I guess, doesn't seem to understand that. I would assume he tries to take his own life later because he's just done. He's like, I've killed all the people that were responsible for my family's deaths. That was my mission. Clearly, everything's a mess, but I'm not going to fix it. So I'm done. But then it's like, well, then kill Ma Gnucci. What are we doing? Or establish order. Like, I'm not saying the Punisher needs to set up like a neighborhood watch, but the whole idea of the Punisher was kind of always, if people get out of line, if people get too extreme, the Punisher's going to come get you. So why haven't the people of Little Sicily, who have seen the Punisher murdering a lot of people, started acting differently? And maybe it's because the idea of the Punisher is dumb. The same way the idea of the death penalty as a deterrent doesn't work. Like, if you are going to commit a crime, you're going to do it whether you think the Punisher's going to find you or not, because you don't think that far ahead. Especially if the crime is like killing an unhoused person's dog. You know, that's not the kind of crime that you go like, I think I can get away with this. That's a crime that you just do. But anyway, I just think this special presentation is interesting because it makes a very strong case against the Punisher, and the only case it makes for him is those things that the Punisher did. Punisher should probably kill the other people too, and by the end of the special, he has not done that either. Let's bring up another thing that I wasn't really able to talk about in the spoiler-free review, but I think it's very important thinking about this story. No mention of Fisk or the task force. Now, I am okay with Frank not being in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. I think that's fine. He clearly has a lot going on. He's going to be in the Spider-Man movie. I'm sure they have an interesting idea for him there. And then also, John Bernthal wants to make this special presentation. This is probably kind of a deal. I can imagine a different version of Born Again Season 2, where Frank not only frees the swordsman, but also the Punisher from Kingpin's cells, and they all fight their way out of the prison. Like, that would be cool, but I'm fine with not having to resolve everything there. I think it's interesting because in Season 1 of Born Again, the cops are Punisher. The cops are doing Punisher stuff. But them doing Punisher stuff means A, them taking the law into their own hands, which they frequently do anyway. B, kind of painting Punisher symbols, kind of messily, onto their body armor. So they're like, we're the Punisher, we're like the Punisher. So it would make sense if they idolized the Punisher, had that big fight with the Punisher. He beat them all up, they caught him. Punisher told the AVTF guys that he hates them. And then next time we see them, they're not doing Punisher stuff anymore. Like, they're clearly kind of embarrassed. And this is supposed to be, not necessarily the breaking point, but one of the first fractures in the armor of like what they think they are. And if, spoilers for Daredevil Season 2, there's a character like Cole who is eventually going to be a good guy, or at least like start that turn, you'd expect that maybe this is where he would stop doing the Punisher thing, because he does respect the Punisher, or something. But in Season 2 of Born Again, not only do they have kind of the shape of the Punisher logo on their body armor, although it doesn't have the white on it, so it's not exactly that, but they have the Punisher symbol. They made that like an official symbol of the task force. So the fact that they're still running around doing Punisher stuff in Punisher's name, and he doesn't seem to care or find out about it, and it's not even addressed, this is all you need to add to it. I think you should add more, but this is what you need. Another voice in the voiceover saying something along the lines of, Little Sicily was obviously affected by the anti-vigilante task force. Although rumors pointed to a local vigilante, targeting the task force, which pushed them out of the area. And we've already seen that show make a very strong case for why we shouldn't have those cops. So we need an explanation for why. We just need someone to say, Frank's getting rid of those guys too when he's got time. It's not his main concern, but he is aware of them. But the fact that season 2 of Born Again goes through and all of this special goes through, and at no point does Frank talk about the task force, it feels like such a missed opportunity. And I don't think this needs to be connected. I don't want any Eternals showing up at the end of this or something. I'm just saying, like, that's the last thing this character did. And now he's doing this, and this is different, but it's not that different. He's not in a different place. If he were in Texas, you know, if he were in California, if he were in Italy, if he were in Sicily, regular Sicily, because that's where the Gnuccis are hiding out because they're like Punishers after us, I would be fine with it. Because I'd be like, yeah, he's not dealing with the anti-vigilante task force. He knows Daredevil's on that, and this is his mission. That you'd have to assume this mission of destroying the Gnuccis also intersects frequently with the task force, especially because one of the Gnuccis is a cop, even though the cops are kind of the good guys in Born Again Season 2. But either way, like, he's a corrupt cop, so he would be right on with the task force, you assume. I don't know. I fully don't know. And I'm not saying that because every single bit of the universe isn't addressed, because Frank doesn't explain what happened to him during the Void incident. Like, I'm not saying because we're missing that, this is bad. All I'm saying is, if part of the idea of the cinematic universe is that if the same character was in the last thing, we're at least going to assume he is in a similar place to where we left him, unless we get new information, and we don't. Anyway, we're 2 minutes in. So here we go. I just want to point out what I don't think is an intentional bit of like universe continuity, but I think if it is, it's genius. We get this scene with a character named Old Vet, played by John Douglas Thompson, who I think does a great job of portraying this kind of character. And there's a roving band of kids, and they beat him up and take his hat and then take and kill his dog. Which, like, economical for if you want us to hate these guys and be excited when Punisher kills them. So, great. Right before they hit him, they say, Dingo! Which, like, in one hand, it's them saying, knock, knock, hey, we're here. But that specifically is an interesting phrase in this universe because we know from the episode of Wonder Man where it was featured, Doorman kind of turned that into a catchphrase. So it's interesting that we're seeing it continue here, even though that's probably not what we're doing. At least my headcanon is that that's what they're referencing.
Ding dong, mother.
The same way that people reference catchphrases from SNL sketches constantly, even if they're not really appropriate. So I like that Doorman is kind of part of this universe. Anyway, moving on. I will say, very sad for the dog. What's going to happen to the dog? The dog, when it gets picked up by this guy, and I'm sure he had a lot of bits where he gave it treats so the dog would like him. Dog looks like it's having a blast. Also, my cat Mortimer, not on my lap. He has watched this with me, though. And as a cat who doesn't love dogs, he didn't even like this part. So that's how affecting it was. I've seen the behind the scenes of this long take, and it's kind of cool. Not just because I think it's interesting that this guy hands the dog off screen, is given a prop dog, and tosses it in front of the truck. But in the behind the scenes footage, you see that the person who gave him the fake dog was John Bernthal himself. So he's very involved in the production of this, and I respect that. I really do. Then we get Frank in his empty apartment, talking to himself and kind of ghosts from his past, reciting what I assume is some sort of Marine code. And we get what's kind of interesting here, a line from Curtis Hoyle, played by Jason R. Moore, who is, I believe, the only character from the Punisher show, besides one of the cameos, but she's not from the Punisher show. But Curtis was an original Punisher character. I believe he's the only one to return. We see a line of him saying something that he is going to say later, and we don't see him say it on screen. So I guess they wanted a line here and filled it, which is interesting. Then Frank cuts a big X on his chest over the Marine logo because he doesn't think he's a good Marine anymore. He's going to quit. And then we get a different version of Curtis Hoyle, who's not laughing at him, and he says,
talk to me. Tell me what's going on. Whatever you need from me, I am right here.
And Frank cries and says, I think I need some help. And when I saw this for the first time, I thought was interesting. He's acknowledging that he's messed up, like that he's got some problems. Either that he needs to work through with therapy or medication or a lot of things. And then that's kind of it. We never see him get help or ask about help or anything like that. And I understand what they're going for. And like, I think if this was the end of this special presentation, and this was a special presentation that ended with Punisher realizing he needs help and stopping Punishering, that would be a really interesting direction to take this character in. People would be furious, but like, the fact that this scene is there at all is interesting. It shows that this version of the Punisher is self-aware. He knows he's hallucinating. He knows he had a really rough time and he's having trouble processing it. And I guess we know the only thing he thinks he can do is take his own life. But realistically, like, there are more things he can do. And the special doesn't really acknowledge that, which is fine because it's the Punisher. It's just weird because the special presentation seems to be pretty seriously trying to get at mental health issues within the military specifically. PTSD, dealing with injuries, all that stuff. I'm not saying it needs to end with Frank checking himself into jail and going to a therapy session or something. But the fact that the ultimate end for a story like this is just keep doing what you were doing. That thing that drove you insane, keep doing it and do it until you're done. Just a weird message, especially for something that is kind of pro-military. Even though, sometimes the Punisher is very anti-military, at least seems very military-industrial complex pro-troop, which I don't think is a controversial stand to take. But in this special, his friends, his fellow Marines are laughing at him. The establishment is laughing at him, and he doesn't give you an answer for what he is supposed to do. We get the silly moment where Frank walks through town and everybody clearly recognizes him, especially this kid. I like that idea. People have said, well, everybody would recognize him. Yeah, let's say you recognize him. What are you going to do? Are you going to call the police and risk him killing those police and then figuring out it was you? Because sure, we know he's a good guy, or at least like an anti-hero, air quotes. But they don't know that. And also, he's clearly insane. So maybe even he used to be cool, but now he's not. And you just keep your head down and hope he doesn't notice you. We get a little bit more exposition from Spectrum News, New York 1. I do think this presentation, even though I'm sure they filmed a lot of it in Vancouver or whatever, does feel very New York in a way that I appreciate. Also, an interesting line in here as they're throwing the person having the breakdown out. A character that I think is named Debbie says,
"You don't need no coffee, you need medication."
And it's yeah, I think he does. I think there's somebody else that could maybe benefit from that. Maybe not as extreme, but it's interesting that we're bringing that up again. And then Frank walks through Beau is Afraid. Now, I've spent a lot of time in New York. I never lived in New York, but I was right across the river. I've been to all kinds of neighborhoods. Not the worst necessarily, but rough neighborhoods. They're not like this. This is what Tucker Carlson wants people to think New York is like. And I say Beau is Afraid, if you haven't seen it, part of the deal with Beau is Afraid is that this character, especially in the first third of the movie, is paralyzed by fear. And the world outside of his window is clearly very exaggerated, right? But you're seeing things through his eyes, why he can't leave his house. It's interesting that the show decides to do this. It kind of reminds me of the note that Kevin Feige gave the Amazing Spider-Man 2 script when they sent it to him, which was just, don't show New Yorkers looting. It's not that they can't loot, but it's the show is setting this up as just crime's gone crazy. There's no Gnucci's and police in charge, so everybody's killing each other. And I don't know, that doesn't feel like it's reality, which wouldn't bother me, except this presentation is trying to play things as very realistic, very serious, but wants to have it both ways. Frank walks to his family's graves, which we saw in season 2 of Netflix Daredevil. They look a little different, but it's fine. And does what I think makes the special work, besides all the fighting stunt choreography, is Jon Bernthal's just a good actor. He's able to put a lot of emotion. It feels very raw, this performance. And it also feels like it gets a lot of time and room to breathe. Ronaldo Marcus Green paces this bit very well. And Frank, because he has done everything, he's gotten revenge on everybody, he decides to take his own life. We get an appearance from Jon Bernthal's actual daughter, Addie Bernthal, playing his daughter, Lisa. I doubt it was the same daughter from the Netflix shows, because these were a while ago, and this actor would not have aged, because the character died. I think it's cute when they're able to do this. Hemsworth does it with his kids. I don't know, as long as the kids want to do it, I think it must be fun. Now, we also see Frank Jr. here, who I kind of forgot existed because of how much this focuses on the daughter, which makes sense, especially now that we know she is Jon Bernthal's actual daughter. And then he remembers his family. There's a nightmare scene where his daughter is killed, and then he's just really, really sad. We get another Punisher no meme. And I think it's interesting here, he doesn't take his own life, even though I can't really explain why in this moment he chose not to. Next, we actually get the line that Curtis Hoyle said earlier in the special, and it set up this question of now that Frank has gotten all the revenge he needs, what else is there left to do? And in my head, I'm get the guys from the Anti-Vigilante Task Force who are doing fascism in your name. But he forgot about that, and he is greeted by Ma Gnucci. So she's played by Judith Light here, who I mostly recognize from her role in The Menu. I like that movie a lot, but she's probably most well known for being Angela on the show Who's the Boss, a little before my time. Now, Ma Gnucci is a character from the comics. She is in the Welcome Back Frank arc, and she's just this. She is a mobster. In the book, she loses all of her limbs. Here, she has difficulty walking, uses a chair, some crutches, and she gives Frank a monologue that I think is confusing. Mostly because I can't tell whether Frank knows who she is immediately or not. If he does, it's weird that he doesn't do anything. If he doesn't, it is weird to me that he does not know that, considering he had all their pictures and everything tied together with string on that board. He would know who Ma Gnucci is. She was in the car when he killed the youngest kid. Then Ma Gnucci starts describing the deaths of her family members. And this is where I'm thinking, I don't think Frank knows who she is. And I think that's strange. considering like he's not the most thorough investigator, and that he would know who the wife and mother of the people he's murdering is. And you can see, which is describing her husband, it looks like we're seeing the wheels turn in Frank's head. Also, just want to point out, because it's funny to me, as bad of a guy as Bobby Gnucci is, he's no DJ Khaled, if you know what I mean. This has to be the first instance of a man doing this in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? So we're getting firsts. Then we get the Carlo Gnucci death. And this one, man, first of all, we learned that this character probably did some sort of inappropriate something with children, which, when I saw this kid, I'm like, he's a child, but I guess maybe children younger than himself, I don't know. But second, more importantly, there are some lines in the special presentation, a lot of them come around here, that feel like a little much. He was a thinker, tells you everything you need to know. It does not need to be followed by,
his mind was his weapon.
But then Frank curb stomps this kid, and this is where Ma Gnucci gets help from someone she calls Barry, which means this is probably Barracuda, one of the other characters from Welcome Back, Frank. However, while Ma Gnucci does seem to serve the same purpose, he is just a scary-looking guy who doesn't do anything. But then Ma Gnucci gives us this classic line,
You forgot about me, didn't you?
And I'm like, did you? Did he forget about you? It seemed like maybe he had spared you, but why did he forget about you? He killed both of the other people in the car, and then the kid. Why not assume the mom has a gun? And this moment gets us our other big question. Why doesn't Frank just kill her? Or attack her? Or something? It doesn't seem to be an issue of self-preservation. And it also doesn't seem like he couldn't do it before the other guys get to him. And we know he has a gun. Which, again, reinforces the idea that I don't think Frank knows what's happening. I think Frank is surprised by all of this information. And it just feels weird for this to surprise Frank. And then we get this classic line, which I think the problem with it is the music takes it so seriously, and it takes so long to say, which is,
I'm the one who's doing the punishing now.
Because, I don't know, I didn't hate You Made Your Bed Now Rot in it, and I even didn't hate It Will Be the Gnucci's Who Did It as her final line. But yeah, man, I don't know, I feel like he's heard that before. And then for Ma Gnucci, I'm like, why not kill him now? I get the supervillain thing, they like to monologue and stuff, but all she wants to do is send hitmen to kill him, right? She doesn't say, like, I'm going to destroy everybody around here because you care so much about these people, because he really doesn't. He doesn't get involved in any of their business. This isn't like Welcome Back, Frank, where the members of the apartment are his found family. They're all just people who kind of maybe have seen him. Whatever, we're almost to the action. And I will stop criticizing individual lines. We get a pretty good appearance from Deborah Ann Woll, who A, I was not expecting, and B, I think again turns in a solid performance, and is a big part of the Punisher's story in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so I do think she deserves to be here. This line is interesting.
Failed your family and now you're failing the city.
Somebody getting back into Arrow? Is it maybe because Absolute Green Arrow seems to kind of be the Punisher? Which I'm very excited for, because I don't know, that book just looks cool. And we get another moment where Frank seems to realize that something's wrong. He's having some sort of psychotic break, but show doesn't really do anything with it. And then find out Karen's actually not there, and she asks him,
What time is it?
and we learn that it's 6:47, the time that everyone's gonna come kill him. Which is funny, because this means the Punisher kind of hallucinated, had some sort of like waking nightmare. And a great way to deal with those, Punisher, is by taking small rests throughout the day, just to get your head straight, get back in the groove. Unfortunately, John Bernthal has made himself the enemy of naps. He does not trust the napping. I am a big fan of naps. No sooner has a celebrity fully lost me than that time Jessie Buckley said she doesn't like cats and made her boyfriend get rid of his cat. Not because she's allergic, because she doesn't like it. But then the action starts and we get like 15 minutes of uninterrupted action, and it's great. All very practical, and we'll get to it, but like they released a behind the scenes video showing how they made a lot of these stunts, and they really set John Bernthal on fire. We had a great fight scene. I love some of the details here. I love the Punisher tries to have a moment where he like tells this guy, I'm the Punisher and I killed you. But it gets interrupted because there's just too many guys around. And I'll be honest, there's definitely more brutal deaths than this one. But the guy that uses the axe accidentally chops his friend and then gets pushed into the other side of the axe sticks out to me as one of the most memorable. You know, little details during this fight scene are great. Frank running out of bullets, finding a new gun, checking how many bullets that one has. It really feels like he's in a video game, but that is how you would have to do this. Especially since Frank doesn't have any guns because he locked them all up. Though he locked them in like a regular bag. I feel like he probably cut that open. Though we see that the apartment complex is in chaos. Punisher needs to kill a bunch of guys. And again, great stunt choreography, great camera work. A very dynamic camera following Frank. Get some fun angles, some POV shots of people getting shot. And then Frank goes on to the roof. Now listen, more good looking, very cool practical fighting. Frank steals a handgun from this guy, and then, in slow motion, is thrown off of the building. Well, he gets one last shot in, and we don't need to see it, but we'll show it. Frank crashes onto an air conditioner. Now, there's a lot going on here. It doesn't look good. This shot lingers on it for way too long. I think you could get away with a quarter of the amount of time on the impact, and then immediate cut to him rolling off, and it wouldn't be so bad. And I'm sure that when they made this, they knew it looked weird. Now, people say it looks like fully CGI. Marvel has come out and said it is not. I'm kind of convinced it's not too. It doesn't look fully CGI to me. What it looks like is they tried to replace the stuntman's face, and it just doesn't look convincing. People say like, oh, it looks like Joel from The Last of Us. I agree. My test for this is if you just cover up his face, and we don't spend that much time on it, I think this looks real. I think the real problem is the camera. There's a very artificial zoom and shake on the camera that just don't look convincing. And look like the kind of thing you would see in like a completely CGI environment. But, I'm not convinced. It is very funny that the next day, after this came out, Marvel puts out this stunt video that shows behind the scenes of all these great stunts. And when I saw this video, I said, well, that's great. Because now they'll be able to once and for all show what happened here. And they didn't. I'm assuming it's because John Bernthal didn't do this stunt. And maybe it doesn't look as cool if it's a different guy. But to that I'd say, doesn't matter. You should probably release this in a second package. Call it Stunts 2 or something. Just give people something. Because otherwise this is kind of embarrassing. Frank tosses himself down a building like Peacemaker. We do get one of the only jokes in this special, which is Frank's reaction to another guy being thrown at him. This kind of ugh, Mondays, before he throws himself off the building. And Frank has this opportunity now to kill Gnucci, but also the bagel store he likes is getting robbed. And there's a kid in there, so Frank has to make the heroic choice. However, I do think, I'm not really sure where people are with this, but it feels like people kind of misunderstand the title of this. And even I did originally. One Last Kill. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool, but obviously that's not what it is. There's many more kills, but it feels like what we're really doing here in this story. We have a Frank Castle who doesn't think there's anything left for himself to do, but then he finds out there's one last person he needs to kill, and he has a choice here whether he is going to kill that person or save the kid. And while in any other medium, I think this is a heroic, he's making the good choice, here he's making what feels like the tragic choice of letting Gnucci go. Because what that does is it gives him one last kill that he cannot get, that keeps him going. Because he is not motivated in the end by being a good person or protecting the community. He is motivated by the fact that he technically has not killed everyone involved in his family's murder. And because he's able to leave Gnucci alive and leave this one last kill, there's still plenty of Punisher work to do until he gets there. Kind of feels like he's creating this technicality, but what's sad about it is it doesn't seem like he's fully doing it because it is the right thing to do or because he's learned something about himself. It's because he knows his life needs a narrative and a purpose, and that purpose is now killing Gnucci. And then the heavy metal music starts, which again is kind of why I think this whole thing takes place in Frank's head. He goes full Frank mode, beats up all these guys, gives them all incredibly brutal deaths. And then a big giant guy shows up to fight Frank. And in my head, I'm like, oh, is this their version of the Russian? Because in Welcome Back Frank, Frank fights a specific mercenary who is so big and scary that not even Frank can deal with him. But no, it's just some guy. All he would have needed to do would be have some version of the shirt on, and I go, oh, they're doing the Russian here, that's cute. Where he kills this guy with Chekhov's pen that they mentioned earlier.
Debbie, where's my blue pen?
And then Punisher leaves. He gets a thank you from Dre, a flower from Charlie, and then he leaves. I feel really bad for the deli owner. Because not only do they have to explain to the cops that the Punisher killed all these guys, I assume they have to leave them there for a while. I don't know what happens if Punisher has a big fight in your store. But because of how lawless this part of the city is, it kind of feels like they just have to get those bodies out of the store and just throw them on the street. I don't know. Then Frank, I'm assuming, walks to the graveyard covered in blood. And because the graveyard is not the part of the city that seems to be chaotic, I'm assuming he just passed some normal people on his way there. So it's a really scary looking guy. Then we see Frank give some punishment to that guy that killed Old Vet's dog. And he's Punisher again now. Why did he stop being Punisher? Unclear. Probably because he thought he had killed all the Gnuccis and he was done doing Punisher stuff. Why is he doing Punisher stuff now? Because Charlie reminded him of his daughter. We kind of get the sense from the ending that the Punisher has made an impact and the people are scared of him now. Even though nothing in the narrative would suggest that's the case. And then there's the post-credit scene where he gives Spider-Man a big ol' hug. Just kidding, but wouldn't that be wild? And it brings me to the last idea of the special, which is just, it is so bizarre that we are going from Daredevil Born Again Season 2 to Punisher One More Kill to Spider-Man Brand New Day, and the Punisher special that links the show the Punisher used to be on and the movie the Punisher is about to be on. Both contains no references to the first show and also doesn't have any teases for the movie. No, I'm not saying I want Spider-Man to show up, but I don't know. Maybe whatever the thing is that he ends up doing, it seems like he's chasing some sort of truck. You kind of assume someone would have a line, maybe something you hear in passing, or someone would say, "Did you see what's going on with that truck in the city?" It seems like there was a moment where the Marvel Cinematic Universe shifted from we should connect everything and we should tease things in the future that'll get paid off later, to people are kind of overwhelmed by all the teasing and all the connections. Let's make things as separate as possible. And this feels like maybe the extreme end of that, and I hope we can pull ourselves back a little bit, because if we're not going to connect this to the Daredevil show or the Spider-Man movie, why put the Punisher in them at all? Why continue this story? What is the continued narrative of this character? And it invites the question which we can't answer now: why is Spider-Man so friendly with the Punisher? If this Punisher is just doing this, like what he did in the special presentation, when Spider-Man figures out that the Punisher is after whoever's in that car, he should make sure to web up and arrest the Punisher too, because he is clearly unwell. And the fact that Spider-Man has this little like, haha Frank, don't do any more shooting, wouldn't be such a problem if we didn't just do this. So listen, on its own, does it hold up a little bit? The action is very good. The acting is very good. The writing, sometimes I think is clever. A lot of other times I think it's fine. And in general, the narrative I feel like is messy. If this were a full-length movie that had these problems, I would still say it's probably a success. But because it's a special presentation, people will forget about it in a week, no matter what. Except for that image of him falling on the air conditioner. It'll be passed around as this year's bad special effect. And it's too bad that that's going to probably be the legacy of this. And, you know, speaking of Daredevil, that reminds me of a video I watched recently by Curious Archives. It's called The Monster Devil. It's part of their Gods and Monsters series. And this series looks at the mythology behind different monsters. And that can be like Cthulhu or Godzilla in their Gods of the Deep video, or like in their most recent video, it could be about the devil. Why does he look the way he looks? He's not described as wearing red in the Bible. So why do we all think the devil looks like this, including the Marvel Cinematic Universe that has a Mephisto that we saw for a second and he was red? And the answer is probably going to surprise you. So you should watch The Modern Devil, along with so many other videos exclusively on this video sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is where you should be watching these. It's the creator-owned subscription streaming service that I helped to create. So basically all my videos, that's Nando V Movies videos and the Nando Cut videos too, go on Nebula first. You can watch them without ads. You can download them to watch them offline. It is without a doubt the best way to watch my videos. And that's not all, because you got exclusive content on Nebula. Like I said, like Tom Nichols videos. But that's not our only Tom. We also have Tom Scott, who's doing a series called England, where he goes to different counties in England and does an interesting thing, learns about an interesting industry. And in this week's episode, he drives a boat from his childhood that makes him so happy. It's the happiest I've seen a person in a very long time. And episodes of his series, England, go up on Nebula a week early. And Nebula is already a steal at $5 a month, or just $60 a year. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get a year of Nebula for just $30. That is $2.50 a month. It is an amazing deal. Again, go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut to check it out. So thank you for watching this special presentation. I promise you guys, this is me saying it in a video, I will do the Wonder Man version of this. I am sorry it got away from me. Until then, stay safe. I'll see you next time.